So far, it's been just one day after the election, and people are still going absolutely bonkers about what should I say, the upset. Well, I mean, for some people like me who expected, what's his name? The outgoing president. What's his name? Gosh, I can't believe I've forgotten already. Trump. So, for those people who expected, like me, who expected that Trump was just going to coast to victory, it's been a dramatic upset. And yeah, so people are still going absolutely bonkers over that, and there's a lot of hope and optimism over what this new ticket for Biden and Kamala Harris will yield for the American people, and also for how would I put it, for the conduct of international diplomacy and policy, things of that nature. So far, it looks like it's been a good thing, good news and fresh air for a lot of people who felt stifled over Trump for the last 4 years. But I guess one of the biggest things that is making the rounds, okay, not the biggest on the news per se, but that I'm noticing in personal circles, is the idea about how this win bids a first, many firsts for women in politics in America, because Kamala Harris is a person of color and she's the first female vice president, the first person of color as a vice president. So yes, there are those undertones about the victory in that sense, and I guess you can say that yes, it is a big deal and it's a sign of progress that is being made. So on that all round, yes, by all means, congratulations to Biden and to Harris. Although I have a slightly different point of view on the first route, because for those of you who pay attention to politics in other regions, you will find that there have been a number of firsts in surprisingly, what will I say, in surprising circumstances, especially if you look at Muslim countries, Asian countries, and then in some countries in the European Union, you'll find out that this is not necessarily a first per se, because we have had female leaders and vices in other countries, whether it's Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Netherlands, and on and on and on. So I guess you could say the train has already been moving for a while when it comes to these sorts of things. That is, women ascending to the ranks of through the ranks of power, if we can put it that way. So so maybe it's not necessarily such a herald as it might seem, but it definitely is a good idea that America is finally on the bandwagon when it comes to these sorts of things, and is finally catching up to other people in the international space, like countries in the European Union, the Netherlands, and the Asian countries that have had female presidents and vices long before now. Okay, so yeah, that's it about the so that's it. I guess that's my take about the election. So hopefully, paying attention, hopefully this is going to yield to lots of good things to come. Okay, so with that preamble out of the way, let's head straight to what I would like to talk about today, and that's how to sell using poetry the right way. Is selling using poetry a thing? You might wonder. Well, I'm surprised, but I guess it is. Now, the backstory to this is that I received an email a while back, somebody trying to sell me something. I'm not sure what it was, and the first line was something like, "Oh, here's a little poem to tell you about us," or something, and then a poem followed, and I just promptly deleted the email, because there's no way I'm going to. I already have things on my agenda, and I've already mapped out how I'm going to try and tackle my day. So really, I don't care who you are, and I don't care who you are and about your poem writing skills, and I'm not going to dedicate all that time to read this poem to find out about who you are and what it is that you do, especially since in this case the poem was it had multiple verses, and it just kept going on, and there was no way I was going to read it, so I just hit delete. and I figured that was a one-off. But since then, I have received more. I've received similar solicitations like that. So I'll be surprised if somebody has gone on a podcast somewhere about sales and marketing, talking about unusual ideas that you can promote yourself or your service, and maybe what they suggested was poetry, and probably this is something that is catching on now in other parts of the world. So far, I haven't seen any Nigerian person or companies trying to use poetry to sell themselves. But in my usual fashion, I figured if people are taking a stab at this, then maybe there's something that we wedding industry professionals can learn about how to promote our services with whatever tips, tricks, tactics, or trends that seem to be out there in the space. So if people are going to take a gander at using poetry, then perhaps we should look into this and find out the right way to do it, so that when these ideas hit the Nigerian shores, hopefully we wedding photographers and planners and makeup artists and cake people and pyro people will use poetry the right way to promote our businesses. So let's just get into it. Now, there are a lot of theories about how to open sales conversations and how to begin sales relationships. Now, one of those ideas is attention getting. Now, if you've read some of the early Brian Tracy stuff, and also if you pay attention to some of the things that Grant Cardone puts out, there are some people who go with this attention grabbing thing. The whole idea is that when someone meets you for the first time or comes into your ecosystem, you want to provoke interest and you want to provoke engagement. You want to be bam in their face and arrest their attention. So I'm assuming that that's the whole point of what this poetry thing was. Perhaps the poem was supposed to catch my attention because it is unusual, and I guess that's what people are banking on. So it's, in my own opinion anyway, without having heard any critical without hearing any critical treatment of these sorts of things, I'm going to assume that it falls under the heading of trying to get attention, to provoke interest, and to build some engagement. Now, there are different frameworks that are out there. Like I mentioned earlier, there's Brian Tracy who had this idea, especially for those of you who have read the old work. I think it's The Psychology of Sales or something like that. There's this idea of opening the conversation with a results-focused statement. Basically, you're supposed to say what your key value proposition is, or you're supposed to say what your chief benefit that the client is going to get, and that is supposed to lure them into the conversation. Okay, so remember, if you come across old Brian Tracy material, these are the sorts of things that you'll be exposed to. So there are a number of sample questions that I came up with that you can use if this is the sort of approach that you want to explore. So typically you would start off with the result statement, the value proposition, or whatever the chief benefit is. So for example, you might start off the conversation by asking the bride or the groom, how would you like your wedding to be the talk of the town? Because some of you wedding planners out there are really good at selling the sizzle, selling pizzazz. So that might be your opening statement when you run into them at the bridal fair, or maybe when you're sending out that broadcast email or whatever it is that you're putting out on Instagram. I guess that'll be the sort of thing that should arrest the attention of your own ideal client. So how would you like your wedding to be the talk of the town? Would you like a guaranteed feature on Bella Naija? I've heard that some wedding planners do offer, I don't know of anyone who is offering these sorts of things as a guarantee that if you go with us, you're going to be on all the top blogs on Instagram and the top websites. But there are lots of brides who are interested in that sort of thing. I discovered the first time that my work got featured on a wedding blog. That was the first time I discovered that there are brides who are interested in those sorts of things, because it was a question that I got asked repeatedly by people who called me from that contact. Like, okay, if we go with you, are you going to be able to get our wedding featured on this site? So if you're a wedding planner and that's your thing, or wedding photographer or whatever, and you have those sorts of connects, then I guess you can use that as the results focus statement that you use to open the question or to open your email or whatever it is. And then for those wedding planners who are price conscious, who like to sell the idea of savings, you could reach out with a question of, would you like your whole wedding to be planned on a budget of 3 million or less? Forgive me, even though I'm a wedding professional, I haven't, as a wedding photographer, we don't get to discuss the overall budgets of our clients. So I don't, this figure 3 million, I just put it out of thin air. So I don't know if that's a realistic figure nowadays or not. But of course, I got married close to 10 years ago. So I guess at the time, a 3 million goal would have been realistic and doable. So I'm not sure about now, especially given that wedding halls cost a bit more than they did back in the day. So anyway, so that's an example of using an attention-getting approach when you open up using the results that you intend to get as the focus of the question. So that sort of thing is supposed to get people to stop and see your email and be like, wow, 3 million, oh, that's good. I was planning on doing this with 10 million, but if it can be done with 3, let's have a look, let's see. So yes, those kinds of things might be able to get you the interest and engagement in your opening statement. So for more details, check out the early stuff of Brian Tracy, and I'm sure if you fool around on the internet, you'll be able to find more things like that. So there's also another idea about opening with a knockout feature of your products or your services. I'm not sure how this is applicable to Nigerian weddings. I haven't really explored this idea before. And also something I came across from an early stuff from early Brian Tracy. There's a legend there about Gorilla Glass. And yes, it's the same Gorilla Glass that we all know that makes phone protectors, things from phone protectors all the way to this panel glass that is used in buildings and things like that. And so yeah, there's a legend there about some salesman who, when the company first came up with Gorilla Glass, the way that he would get people's attention is he would walk into the prospect's office and then he would ask a question like, how would you like to see glass that doesn't shatter? And then of course the fellow would be like, that's not possible. And then the salesman would just put the glass on the table, take out his hammer and whack the glass. And of course the person would be stunned and would try to jump away because he doesn't want to be hurt by flying glass. And lo and behold, the glass would be there and the glass wouldn't have broken at all, because for the glass paneling, especially for buildings, those things are extremely resilient. And so supposedly this is how Gorilla Glass started getting a lot of traction with these attention grabbing techniques. So if you have some knockout feature of your products or service, maybe for wedding professionals who are involved in the pyro space, you people that do firecrackers and smoke and all those sorts of things, things that can be easily demonstrated. So I'm sure if you have some really cool, quirky thing or something that is, people haven't quite seen in Nigeria yet, but you're one of those people who has gotten into the market, then maybe you can use this sort of thing to initiate the sales conversation and to get interest. You just take the knockout feature, make a demonstration, and then from there people will be like, wow, and then they start engaging and you're on your way towards making a sale. Now there's also another example. I'll get to the poetry thing in a bit. I just want to expose the different ideas that people have traditionally used attention getting. Before we go into this whole thing of poetry, let's just see what's out there about how people used to how people tried experimenting with getting attention in the old days. Okay, so we've gone through using result statements, starting with your result statements and focusing on the benefit that the client is going to get, or using a knockout feature in the demonstration to get the conversation going. Then there's also what some people term to be contact marketing. Some people call it gifting. It's still new, so it has different names depending on who the author or the promoter is. But the whole idea is it's usually account-based, and by that it means someone really specific in the company, or in this case, since we deal with brides and grooms, in the family that you are targeting. So let's say the bride's dad, for instance. So it's the idea behind it using highly targeted gifting. So you could send specific kinds of gifts that dad will appreciate, because you know him and his likes and dislikes and stuff like that. And because you give him highly targeted and specific gifts, you'll be able to get the conversation rolling. Yeah, you'll be able to get the conversation rolling there. I'm not sure how this would apply to the wedding industry. Well, I guess maybe this example that I gave about sending a gift to the bride's dad might work, but it's an idea that is out there anyway, that you have someone specific within the decision making unit. That's a term I'm borrowing from the engineering space. That's what engineers in sales. That's one of the early questions that they ask. What is the decision-making unit? Okay, so there's the bride and there's the groom, and then there's the parents. Are there who else is going to be involved in making this decision on X, on photography, on the makeup artist, or whatever? In that case, you're going to be able to zoom in and focus your efforts and highly target your efforts. So let's say for the wedding planner, the decision-making unit might be wide enough to include bridegroom, mommy, and daddy. But if you are a makeup artist, the decision-making unit might be solely the bride, full stop. Or maybe the bride and bride's sister. I don't know how these things work for other people. But for those of us who are wedding photographers, sometimes the decision-making unit is as simple as the bride alone. And sometimes it's bride and groom, and sometimes it extends to mommy and daddy, and sometimes especially when an uncle gets involved and says, "Oh, let me gift you," then Uncle Kunle might now be in the picture as part of the decision-making unit. So, bottom line is, if you're going to use contact marketing and gifting, you need to find out what the decision-making unit is within the account. And I say account in quotation marks, since we're not dealing with business accounts per se. So find out who the people who are strategic in making that decision within the account, and then give a highly targeted gift to get that conversation going. And then there's also ideas about shock and awe, and that's what a lot of people use in the online space. All these clickbait, all those titles that are basically just designed to get you angry or curious so that you can click. And then there's also the clever personal branding things that some wedding vendors do, like wedding photographers and their interesting hairstyles, and some wedding planners with their interesting fashion style, fashion sense. So yeah, all these things that are intended to get the conversation going. So that's just a brief overview or summary. It's not exhaustive. Remember, I'm not an academic. I'm just giving you a working man's opinion from being involved in the field. So yeah, these are ways about how people used to get these things done in the past. Find ways to open up conversations and to get the relationship going. Now, back to where we started, poetry. Now we have these unusual modern ideas where people are sending poetry. And I've noticed that the trend seems to be, from receiving 2 or 3 of these things, that people are sending poetry about them. In other words, I'm a wedding photographer, and then I send the bride a poem about me, or the prospective groom a poem about me. Now, this is how I think it can be done right. It's a bad idea to send people poetry about you, because really, no one cares about you. People care about themselves. They also care about the results that they're going to get and the fulfillment that they are going to get from having you involved in the wedding. So, except in cases where your what's that thing? What's it called? Is it high end? And you're using and the principles behind it are, what's it called? Exclusivity and things like that. No one really cares about you. So If it's about getting Davido, for instance, to perform at the wedding, oh yes, that is high end, there's some exclusivity involved, and so there's a mix between the bride and the groom caring about it's Davido and it has to be Davido, and also caring about the effect, the effigy that the buzz that will generate having Davido perform at their wedding. But in most cases, no one cares about you. They care about themselves and the results on the fulfillment that they're going to get. So, dear wedding photographer or wedding planner or makeup artist, if you must send a poem to the bride or to the groom or to any prospective person who hits you up on Instagram and you want to initiate the sales conversation, if you must send them a poem, let the poem focus on your understanding of their situation and let it focus on the results that they're going to get. If you send them a poem saying, thank you for hitting me up on Instagram, let me send you a poem to tell you about me, Ayede Film and Photography, or about me, Judy's Makeup Artists International, and then your poem starts off, we were founded by so and so. Our founder had a vision for this, that, and what we do is this, that. I really don't think people are going to pay attention. If you find people who are curious and who want to strain through, they probably will flip through, probably will skim and try and get to the relevant parts that is relevant to them. But bottom line is, if you must try this using poetry thing, don't make it a poem about you, because no one cares about you. Make the poem about them, okay? Their situation and the results that they are going to get. If you do it that way, I think you stand a better chance. And if you look at all these ideas that we expressed so far, that's opening with the result statement in mind, or with the knockout feature, and even in contact marketing and gifting, sending targeting gifts, you will find that the focus of the interaction is not you, the vendor, is not you, the photographer or the makeup artist. The focus is the person that you are talking to. So if you must use poetry, make that shift. I'm still not convinced if it's a good idea or not, but I think if you make that shift and make the poetry about you, then you increase your odds of initiating the sales conversation and building a sales relationship. So thank you very much, guys, for listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. I'm your host, Abuja-based photographer Tavishima Ayede. I'll catch you guys again on the next episode. Thank you very much for listening.